All right. Welcome to I Read the Clermont Sun so you don't have to for August 9th, 2025. This is going to be the August 7th edition of the Clermont Sun with a press deadline of August 4th, unless you're the county government, in which case apparently you can get stories in either after or date them as if they are put in after that deadline. All right, so let's get right to it. This one is going to be heavy on the animal shelter because not because the Clermont Sun did any stories on the animal shelter, but because they republished provided content from Diamond Dave on the animal shelter. Of course, the Clermont Sun ignores significant issues at the animal shelter because they are not allowed to report on anything that would be contrary to the wishes of the government. So let's start with the Sun. Now we've kind of fallen into this pattern with the Sun that they're so weak that they just basically reprint as their own content information from the county engineer on construction projects, and they show absolutely no innovation, no thoughtfulness. You know, as I've pointed out, you could have a little map and you could have numbers on the map 1, 2, 3, 4. And so you could then tie the map to specific projects. But, that would involve some work on the part of Megan. And that's what she's going to do. All right. So let's go. Then there's a thing about a Brown County driver charged with shooting. So there's a legitimate news story. So I'm glad there's a story. It says he's upset to appear before Nathan Little on August 11th. Maybe I'll stop by for that. I don't think I can, though. All right. So now we're going to get into some shelter stuff. So a county awards contract to double the number of outdoor kennels at the shelter. This is not a story because it's a press release submitted by the county, and I'm going to go. And the reality is that this newspaper ignores major issues to publish the government provided Pravda narrative related to the shelter. And now there's another story on the front page that's also submitted content about Loveland. We're going to come back to the shelter here in a second. This Loveland thing is about PFAS, water cleansing. I'm not that versed on it. I think this is the kind of stuff that RFK Jr. is all over because we've basically poisoned the water supply from chemicals. And, a lot of some views that this has something to do with why boys in particular have lower testosterone is because they're basically being medicated to have lower testosterone through the water because of these chemicals in the water. So, but that's the City of Loveland story that's on here. It's again submitted content. So what I'm going to do is I want to remind you and the Clermont Sun of stuff that this Clermont Sun doesn't report. So since the shelter has been under government control with the Diamond Dave Painter promise of saving money, because the prior shelter operator that did a decent job said they needed more money to be able to operate the shelter correctly, or even remotely correctly. The hours that the shelter is open have been reduced by 38% under Dave Painter control. The dog intake, this is through the end of the year 2024, has gone down 24%. The exits have gone down 41%. The spending, I think it's way more than this because they hide a lot of the spending, but the spending is at least 2.07 times more than it was under the private operator with less than half the staff. Less than half the staff and I think they hide a lot of things. They hide a lot of things because of Diamond. And then when Diamond Dave's narrative, even when they hid stuff that they were going to save money by operating it as a government project, when that all collapsed, then it became that the prior operator had allowed mice infestations and complete lies, and bullshit. Okay. Other reasons like distract you from what we said yesterday, because we're politicians and that's what we do. Okay. And then fundraising, this is the most killer, is that even with the two times more spending, actual less money gets spent on the animals, at least through 2024, because they lost basically $1 million of annual fundraising. Because people give a lot of money to a humane society, they don't give money to the government. Okay. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about what happens when people give money to the government, what a fiasco it is. Because there's a second article in the Sun this week on the animal shelter. So I'll hit some more stuff on the animal shelter and the disaster that it is. And now they have this Kiera Swartz in there. And I don't believe she's even mentioned in the article. Um, oh, I forgot to cover this. This is the 48% reduction in personnel on hand. So the county would have this org chart of all these people that work at the shelter, but 48% of the positions weren't filled. I don't know how that's changed over time. We don't get reports like that from the Sun of what's the actual staffing going on at the shelter. We get basically probed and nonsense. And by the way, like typical government, I'm gonna go back all the way to the article. Okay. So, like typical government, this thing about the outdoor kennels has been being talked about for like a year and a half, maybe 2 years. Okay. You would have thought we would have done this, David Painter, remember, he says when government does stuff, it can't get done fast. And he's absolutely right. When David Painter does stuff, it can't get done fast. That's why you have the shelter. That's why you're idiotic to not have an outside humane society run your shelter who can get things done and versus government that is inclined to not get things done. Okay, so I'm going to run past these things again. Just so you remember that the Sun won't tell you 38% reduction in hours open, 24% reduction in dog intake, 41% reduction in dog exits, at least 2 times, probably 3 times more getting spent than under the Humane Society at less than half the staff. At half the staff, lost $90 million in annual fundraising, and personnel, at least at the end of 2024, were 11 versus 21 when the private operator was kicked out. So the Sun doesn't report any of that. It doesn't report any of that. And you think that's a much more important story. That'd be a great story, right? What's funny to me is not only does Megan Alley have no journalistic skills that I have seen, she has no interest in ever winning any awards or getting to a better paper because she can't produce any meaningful content. Oh, I forgot about cat exits. Remember, we got rid of cats because David Painter has some negative hatred of cats. And so now we don't have cats at the shelter. And in the last year, the private operator, there were 1,023 cats exited through the shelter. We have cats. We like cats. Cats are good. You don't have to have a cat, but your animal shelter should cover cats. Okay, so now we're going to go on to page 2 in the Sun. There's about the PFAS. There's about the Loveland. We got some article from Bethel Tate. Everything is submitted content. Okay. Like, none of it's actual news. I love here that I guess the Sun did something on this Bethel article. Text has been edited for formatting. Now, this is going to be ironic that the Sun is editing somebody's text for formatting. They ought to focus on their own text for formatting. Okay. Now we see the outdoor kennels. By the way, when my wife and I went to the Hamilton County shelter, their outdoor kennel setup was such that the dogs had every cage inside had a door that went outside. So they had an indoor-outdoor kennel like a zoo might have for cages where the animal can be inside or outside, but nobody has to take it outside. It could go through a door, and like in the winter, they could shut the little doors. The doors drop down this way. They could close the doors and keep the animals in the warm. And so you might want to think about design things, but we're going to come back. We're going to talk about why I think investing anything in this current kennel facility is El Stupido. And we're going to come back to that. It's a waste of money. It's typical David Painter, waste of money. All right. Now we've got something submitted by OKI about van pooling. So anyway, just we had a community calendar. I love the first event on the community calendar is August 8th. The paper's press deadline is August 7th. Nobody gets it for several days. So this community calendar thing would be over before you would be aware of it. You got the Sudoku, you got the crossword, you got the Jungle Gyms ad. Now let's get into opinion. We got our boring regular article from John on veteran stuff, all for veterans. I'm not all for this John guy every week having these articles about needing more money for veterans, basically. More money, gimme, 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 gimme. Okay. We have a $37 trillion debt. I would like to see John write an article about how we could deliver better services to vets at significantly less money, just like the way Elon eliminated what 80% of the employees at X and delivers basically the same or better service at this point, probably better service at this point with Grok, etc. Okay, much more forward-looking stuff in X than there was under Twitter. All right, and then we've got some thing. I want to harp on this article just real quick here because the bloated billionaire class. Basically it's the anti-MAGA, anti-big beautiful bill. Megan Alley is supposedly a screaming libtard, so she probably likes this the article. Now, who is this guy who wrote the article though? Dick Pullman. That's a funny name, Dick Pullman. so, okay. Dick Pullman, a veteran national political columnist based in Philadelphia. Okay, so this is what we have in our Clermont paper. Let's think about this for a second. If we had a real reporter, maybe they could go do a little piece on that, asking different elected officials what their view is of the big beautiful bill. David Painter asked the head of the Republican Party, the Democrat Party, give them 50 words each for commentary. That would be actually entertaining. It would be local, but there's Megan. We can't do that. We're too fucking lazy at the Clermont Sun to do that. Then about some cancellation of a grid thing. I think we need to improve our grid. I don't know that anybody reading this would understand what this is about. I know I don't. But if the newspaper is going to delve into the grid, it might be, does this even relate to Ohio? This is like a grid through the Corn Belt. And I don't know that it really affects, it directly relates to Ohio. We have a lot of electric issues here. Dave Taylor, I interviewed him at the Union Township Police Night Out talking about his participation in a USDA thing where he was talking about needing to stop solar farms from taking over all the prime farmland. That might be more relevant to our community. And maybe Megan, I've never seen Megan Alley at a single event. None, zero, zip, zilch, nada. Okay. And she could do interviews with these people. You just got to show up. The same thing goes for Scott Wortman. So Scott Wortman from the Enquirer, came to me once looking for how he could get an interview with David Taylor. And I told him, my impression was David Taylor resist interviews. Now, I've encountered David Taylor twice at community events, the Fair Parade and the Union Township Police Night Out, and both times did interviews with them. Here's a tip for reporters. If you want to do interviews with these people, you got to show up. Show up at events where these people are located. All right, now we've got this formatting thing. Remember that the Sun had stuff on the fair last week. It might have been the week before, but they had a summary, okay? And this is another summary of junior fair results. And it has the same formatting. Look at this, where it's almost unreadable. It is it's not almost unreadable. This is unreadable. Okay. How about some things like headings by category? Put all that poultry stuff together, put all this stuff together. See, these people work for this stuff and they succeed, and maybe they would want to buy this and save it. But look at how unreadable it is. It's like, if they just hit hey, maybe we shouldn't justify these things where it's all very short lines of text. If we just go in there and hit the don't justify, it would be more readable. But they don't care. I mean, it's just lazy. And the funny part is they're reformatting other people's articles for formatting when this is their formatting. It's laughable. Okay, now we got the Jake Dowling sports part, which I'm always complimentary towards, to the point where I don't even really look at it that much because I just know it's going to be solid and good information. Now, I must have put this in the wrong place here, so I'm gonna pop out. I put a thing in here about the animal shelter because there's another article about the animal shelter. Let me find this. I must have put this. We're going to come back to that. I must have put those pages in the wrong place. But more sports stuff from Jake Dowling. Here's this article here on gambling's putting sports athletes at risk. I agree with this, by the way. I think the level of gambling on the sports stuff is out of control. When you can and highly it basically says, "Let's tempt every athlete to be corrupt," okay? Because now you can bet on anything. I can probably bet on how many dildos are gonna get thrown on the court in a WNBA game. That's a joke, but if you follow the WNBA, you know what I'm talking about when I say that. So I do think the gambling is out of control. I think the name, image, and likeness stuff has already fostered a great deal of corruption in colleges, including at Ohio State, and I think I'll have more on that later, unrelated to this. Now we've got the payola section. This is why the Clermont Sun can never say anything negative about Diamond Dave Painter or anything involving the government because they rely on this payola that legally these ads have to be published in the paper of record. In our area, they could be published in the Clermont Sun or the Enquirer. And if God forbid Megan would have an actual real news article and make the powers that be mad, they could pull these ads, put them in the Enquirer for a few months, and drive the Sun out of business instantly. So there you go. That's why the Sun is the way it is. They can't survive without government ads. I've also been told in the past that one of their big money makers is printing the Fair Guide, which is also effectively controlled by the government. So the press is beholden to the government, and that's why it's nothing but a press release trash rag. Okay. All right. So here's some more of your fair results stuff. Unreadable fair results stuff, or very hard to read fair results stuff, and then some other ads. Okay. And then there's another thing about improvement project at the shelter. Okay, bids for improvement project at the shelter, improve operations, remodeling project, to install a washer. Okay, so if you followed this washer story, like years ago, literally years ago, somebody gave 60 grand for a washer, and because they didn't have a way to wash it. And it's been like a 4-year project. It has been like a 4-year project. So it's getting here like news that they're gonna, I guess at some point, going to have a washer, but it has literally been a 4-year project. This is why you don't have the government operate a shelter. You have a humane society do so that can get stuff. Could you imagine if you were a restaurant, okay, and you didn't have a proper washer for your dishes, and you told the health department, it's going to take us 4 years. It's going to take us 4 years to get a washer. That answer would not be acceptable from a restaurant. Why is it acceptable for the government to take 4 years to do a washer? Okay, so and all the bullshit aside, oh, we need special kind of venting. Business needs that too, guys. Not that hard. Not a big deal. Okay, and you got to love like, oh, here's a picture of a room. Okay, that looks untidy. But here's what I wanted to hit on is they talk about these kind of things. And I talked about losing $1 million in donations. Well, one of the donations, and it was in the same era that the 60 grand got given for the washer, was they talked about for the kennel expansion thing, which was the first article, that they're going to use this $20,000 grant from Purina. The grant was from 2022. Okay, the grant was over 3 years ago. And they previously announced that they had used it for other purposes. But then people started yelling and screaming, and now, oh, no, we got it. We're not going to use it for this. Well, was it used or was it not used? It doesn't make any sense. But 3 years to do improvements for which you got $20,000 in 2022. 3 years later, you're, I guess, going to do something about improving something someday. It is so bad. And by the way, Kiera Schwartz, the woman in charge of the shelter right now. Let me get up where I was. This is going to not work. I can tell you, I've seen her contracts. Anybody in their right mind that would have accepted the position of shelter administrator, or whatever she is, would have demanded in their contracts, if they were worth anything in reality. I'm not meaning to disparage her. They would have demanded autonomy, okay, because of knowing all of the issues with the shelter, but she demanded nothing. Okay. I think that she just, She also knows. I know that she never went to any of the people involved with operating the shelter previously to ask them about lessons learned. So um, she's a young woman. Young people make mistakes and get taken advantage of, and I think that she made a mistake and got taken advantage of by what she is by this whole shelter thing. Now, I'm going to come back and do the Jungle Gyms ad in a second here. I think I'm up to that. So the paper's sticking at 12 pages, but I want to hit two other things relating to the shelter. First, the reason why you don't want to invest money in the shelter in any big way is because we need to be having a plan for a new shelter. We should have had a new shelter probably a decade ago. Why? The shelter where it's located is in a terrible location. The land would be more valuable used for something else, like something for the sheriff's office or the bus, the CTC, or some government thing. It's all government around there. You can't. There's not a good area to walk the dogs there. It's all like uneven, and most exciting of all, it's
all right, Diesel.
So only in Idiotville would you think that it's a good idea to have your shelter abutting a gun range so that animals all get PTSD. And if you were going to adopt a dog, you might say, I don't want to get one from the Clermont County shelter because it's going to have PTSD because of the gun range. Maybe if you have a gun range and you're constantly shooting off. But apparently, you have the dogs in cages most of the time. They're confined areas. When there's gunfire going on. And the thing that's so dumb about it is the answer from the county is, oh, well, the sheriff's office, they try to minimize use of the gun range. Well, I don't want that either. I want the sheriff's office to be able to use their gun range to train fully and appropriately, not to be cutting corners on training. But to have a shelter that is directly across the street from a gun range and then be investing money in the shelter, that's Diamond Dave idiocy. That's like putting roundabouts on a highway in New Richmond to guarantee that business will not come there that involves semi-tractor trailer trucks because they can't handle these roundabouts that you want to put in. It's so stupid. So that's part one. As far as Kiera, the manager of the shelter or the administrator, and my pointing out that she's being taken advantage of, she is not allowed to do interviews. And I don't think that either of these articles mention her at all. Okay. In these two Sun articles, she's not the person leading anything. Okay. She's a figurehead. And, she seems like a nice person. She's probably going to learn some important lessons from this that hopefully will stick with her for her life. But I caught up with her on August 5th at Sheriff's Police Night Out, and she's not allowed to do interviews. She's not allowed to do interviews. Here's the whole interchange, which is only a minute.
Hey, Kiera, how are you doing?
Good.
You ready to do a quick little interview now about what developments have happened?
I'm actually getting ready to take Moose back because he's starting to lunge at other dogs. So,
all right, but real quick, what have been the biggest positive developments so far at the shelter under your tenure?
I mean, the team collaboration's been great. We work really well together as a team. We just recently got approved for the new outdoor kennels, so we're going to start that construction soon, which is really exciting. That'll put us up to 53 outdoor kennels. So everybody's really looking forward to that. Dogs will be able to get out a lot more, and it'll be easier on the staff as well. So.
And you're still forbidden, though, from doing a regular interview?
I have not been told that I'm able to, so.
Okay. That's sad, don't you think?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, so there you have it. She's not allowed to do press interviews. Okay, she's just a figurehead there, and she's going to wake up and realize it. Okay, now let's get on to the Jungle Gyms ad to wrap it up. Here, I've got 4 minutes to do so. Get my jungle music playing. And here is the Jungle Gyms ad. So I'm gonna maybe have to go over there on a beer run. And so I'm probably gonna, if I do, I'm gonna go over there. If they get this Pepsi deal on these $1.75, limit one. Got to bring my wife with me. But that'd be a great deal on the bottles. 6-pack of bottles for hopefully if they include all Pepsi products. I like the Mountain Dew. So hopefully it includes all Pepsi products. But of course, you got the good meats, always featuring an unbelievably good selection of meats. Got Montgomery and barbecue sauce. Their cheese, it's $7.75 for you. Buy the cheese and cut it yourself. You know, more meats, good stuff. Don't forget the Jungle Gyms podcast. Fish with heads on. I'm going to start keeping track of if there's ever a ad for seafood that doesn't. Maybe this is what draws people in. They love fish with heads on them. My goal in life is to never be served a fish with a head on it. Some vegetables and produce. A deli and cheese shop. These chicken Caesar wraps look pretty good there. And you got some cereals. I don't know about the Fruit Loops. Is RFK Jr. gotten the dyes switched to more like Canada, where it's natural dyes and not synthetic dyes? In Canada, they use in Fruit Loops, they use carrots for the red, some sort of carrot stuff for the red. We use some chemical red because it pops a little bit more. I've watched things on YouTube of looking at each cereal, and it does pop a little more, but it also kills your kids. Okay, so chili, Gold Star. I might get some of that. I don't have an issue with Gold Star or Skyline. We almost always get Skyline though, but my wife is not a fan of Gold Star. Got some bakery items down here. Cheesecake by the slice. Maybe go over there and get a chicken Caesar wrap, a cheesecake, and a beer. But that would still be what would that be? Like 16. That'd be like $22 a person. If you got how much was the chicken Caesar wrap? The chicken Caesar wrap, $5.99. You get the cheesecake, $4.99. So you're up to $11. You get a beer. You got to get the one to go outside. So you're up to $16 a person for the Caesar wrap, the cheesecake, and the beer with a Dora cup, so you can go walk around the parking lot drinking beer while you're there in the world's dumbest Dora. 5% on Wednesday, senior save, Golden Buckeye card is what their website said when I checked, was required to get the 5%. Inflatable instant fork. Okay. You probably can't fit in that. Toys and collectibles, a pop. And then I always look to see if they got Natty Light down as a beer. Getting there. Oh, there it is. Natty Light's back. Okay, so they went like 2 weeks without Natty Light being featured. So Natty Light's back. I'd love to see Miller Lite featured. Miller Lite discount. Okay. A lot of times, by the way, at Jungle Gyms, they have rebates on beer. See, this Natty Light has a rebate $5. So if you're willing to do the rebate forms, go there and get your beer, because a lot of times there's $5 rebates, whereas that's like Walmart, there's not a $5 rebate. And we got Sam Adams Oktoberfest. All right, so that is me reading the Clermont Sun. I mean, a lot of this, it's just the same old crap, and a lot of it's just very disappointing because they just publish basically payola articles from the government, and they don't tell you the truth about things. And we desperately need the truth in Clermont County. We'll see if they cover in the upcoming week, if they cover any of the police night outs. So there were a ton of police night outs. I did a ton of interviews with elected officials. Let's see if what the Sun puts in. We can compare next week what the Sun puts in about police night outs versus what I did for police night outs. Any event, that's the end. Thank you for